Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 654, End of Life Supplements. November 15th, 2021. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norton. Thanks for joining us. The online platforms have been under fire for some time about allowing the spread of misleading advertising. But instead of managing the problem, many of these networks are simply blocking whole ad categories. How will this affect advertisers? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, whether advertising is dealing with ageism, the impact of Twitter Blue, how supply chain issues are energizing American-made products, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the Director of E-Marketing Briefing at Insider Intelligence, Mr. Jeremy Goldman. Jeremy, welcome back.
Great to be here, Bob. Thanks.
And also with us, we have the Managing Partner and Marketing Practice Lead at CI Squared, as well as host of Across the Pond Marketing Transformed. He's a co-host there. Mr. Samuel Mani is here. Hi, Sam.
Hey, Bob, I think I've made my title even longer, just especially for you and the audience this week.
It's always about the same size, so no worries, I'm fine. And finally, we welcome back the chair of the Management and Marketing Department at Oakland University, Dr. Janelle Townsend is with us. Hi, Janelle.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is a brain trust. I'm really, really glad I have you all because there's some really deep topics, and I think we need your brains on this. So let's get right into it. First up, Microsoft is banning ads from gambling, end-of-life products, supplements, and lawsuits. Boy, end-of-life supplements, that would be a whole category. We don't even want to get into that. Now, Facebook is blocking ads on sensitive topics like politics or political orientation. It seems like everybody out there, all the ad platforms, are starting to get really, really sensitive about what they run on their advertising platforms. I mean, go figure. But the way they're treating it is kind of this hack and slash approach as the ad platforms begin instituting blanket blocks on topics that have caused them so many problems, it's likely that many legitimate ads will be caught in the crossfire as well. And that's the big concern that I have, having read all these articles. So, Jeremy, many have clamored for greater oversight of ads on all these platforms, from Facebook to Google to YouTube and on and on. But are these solutions, shall we say, what we've been actually asking for? Is this something that is legitimately handling the problems, or is it causing more problems? What are your thoughts?
So it's interesting. I think I read this a little bit differently than you. I think that, yes, there are going to be things in the crossfires, absolutely. But at the same time, what these platforms are doing is ultimately doing a cost-benefit analysis and saying, is it this going to basically make them more money or cost them more money, right? It's obviously a little bit of a hit to their bottom line, but the damage in their reputation on an ongoing basis from handling some of these categories, I think that that's the bigger thing that they're really trying to be cognizant of. So is this something that, am I going to be somebody who always defends the ad platforms? Not really, but at the very least in this case, it seems to be, and like a cynical, cold, calculated way of saying, does this make sense? I agree it is a slippery slope, and I think that there will probably be things caught in the crossfire. But the key thing is, can those be small little misfires that they work on optimizing and solving for the gaps in these solutions rather than creating enormous problems for advertisers.
But all along, we've always said that the algorithm should be they're smart enough to get the ads correct. So why can't they get them when they're wrong? I mean, why is it that the algorithms cannot be trained to figure out when you're selling snake oil in form of a supplement as opposed to a real supplement that has some legitimate benefits? I mean, it's almost like taking this blanket approach that Google's taking and getting rid of lawsuits, supplements, end-of-life products, gambling. I mean, it's just like, I know some of these products are unsavory to some people, but there's a lot of legitimate marketers out there selling these products that are not snake oil or not problematic or arguably actually helpful. So I'm a little taken aback by this hack and slash approach. Isn't this going to cause more problems for people down the line?
What's interesting about this is that you kind of even answered it. Why can't the algorithms be trained? They are being trained by virtue of changing policies and then figuring out where things go wrong. I mean, you basically train things in real time. And I think that the key thing about this one person's snake oil salesman is another person's MCT oil salesman, in the sense that these platforms get to decide for themselves what are things that are too risque for them and what are categories that just aren't worth it. Now, I think the bigger problem is the fact when you have an oligopoly like this is that basically if you want to advertise certain things and no platform will take you, you have an option as to where you advertise. And I think that is something that is a valid concern.
Yeah, and it keeps growing. I mean, there's so many ways that the ad platforms, because of the monopoly that they have, the duopoly as it's often called, between Google and Facebook, but really it's all the ad platforms, getting involved with this. Microsoft. I'm sorry, I blamed Google for these bans. Google has other problems. Microsoft is actually the one who's banning gambling, end of life, and supplements. So we don't want to cause too many problems down the line for ourselves. Yes, I said that wrong. Correction. But Sam, what are your thoughts on this situation? I mean, is this going to cause more problems for the platforms down the line? Is it going to be hurtful to advertisers in these categories? Is it going to be something that is sustainable? And is it wise, considering the fact that we have other means of trying to figure out which ads are good and which are bad? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, that's the point. It's surprising. So I try and go to the source and read what they said. So I'm on the sorry, everyone keeps calling them Facebook. Meta. I was on Meta's site, and I was looking at the announcement about. No.
Let's not go there. Meta is the parent company, and you were not on Meta's site. You were on Facebook's site. So let's just be clarifying on that.
Hang on. Yeah, you are. So sorry, there is no brand confusion being caused by the rebrand marketing team. All's good. Keep moving. So anyway, as I was on Facebook site, and I'm reading the text of what they're saying, and basically Jan 19, 2022, they're going to remove these targeting options on health causes, so lung cancer awareness or World Diabetes Day. Nope. Sexual orientation, so same-sex marriage or LGBT culture, you can't. And then religious practices like Jewish holidays, so political beliefs, social causes. And as I'm reading through this, I'm thinking, wait, who are the people who are going to actually have challenges with this? And I'm not and that's when I start to see sort of the labels and the context, it's almost saying, hey, we can't figure it out, so no one can do it. And that just feels problematic. And if we can scrutinize and pass out what the good and bad ads are, we know with the recent news from and the whistleblowing from Frances Haugen and of what was going on there, that essentially the algorithm rewarded bad behavior and targeted more of the bad stuff. So why can't you identify that and correct it to by the good stuff, or at least be better at screening things out? So to put this carte blanche sort of none of it can happen feels like a choiceful overreaction to create a backlash to allow allow what we used to have. It's almost I don't know. When I read the text here, and I'm just thinking about this, is this going to actually cause such an uproar that people would rather have something than nothing? And my plea to all these organizations and these ad tech organizations is always focus really on raising the bar. But I don't see, again, I'm sure Facebook are doing this in good faith. As I'm reading through the text, I don't see an appetite to actually be a cause for good and raising the bar. It's like, oh, it's problem. This is bad. This is challenging, so we're not going to do it. But I'll shut up because there was another point I wanted to make about brand safety in general, which is kind of probably fueling some of this. But I'd love to hear, Janelle's perspective. Or
I'd love to bring
to
Janelle in this conversation. Bring us home, Janelle. What are your thoughts? I mean, are they handling these issues correctly? Is this the only thing that they can do, or is it just going to cause more problems? What are your thoughts?
Good topic because it is complex. I'm not sure I'd call it quite a wicked problem, but it's tending in that direction because you have this balance between censorship effectively, right? Because of the oligopoly situation has been mentioned. But on the other hand, in a competitive market environment, if consumers really want these things and there are companies willing to provide them, they're going to find a way to communicate this to consumers eventually. It may just be some alternative means. And if there's enough demand and if there's enough money there, eventually these platforms are going to bring them back and open this up again because it is a market space. But what is their responsibility to society to ensure that what is on their platforms is wholesome, if you will? Boy, define that. Who gets to define it? So it's really tough. And so it becomes, from a strategic perspective, what does the brand want to be about? What does the brand, I think it was Sam or Jeremy who said earlier about, the cost benefit has been weighed up. And at this point in time, they don't see the cost being worth the benefit to their brands, but either in short-term financial returns or long-term brand building. But at some point in time, that may switch, and some of these things may be added back in over time.
I hate to say this because conspiracy theories are at the heart of most of the reasons these platforms are so gun shy about trying to advertise some of these products or trying to manage the content streams on their platforms. But to me, there's always that conspiracy theory going on in the back of my head about what's really going on. What are they doing? And I'm wondering, Jeremy, do you think there's any hidden motives in these tactics? I mean, is this because they have more freedom to do it because of the Apple privacy situation that's already suppressing revenue? So they're just like, well, we might as well clean house and make it, get out of trouble with Congress a little bit and figure this stuff out on the back end. I mean, is something like that going on, or is it just trying to position themselves as being upstanding citizens right before regulation is coming in play, and it's purely a political move on their part? Or are they really concerned about the users and wondering whether or not they're getting legitimate advertising? I mean, out of all those scenarios I just posed, it seems the last is probably the least likely in the minds of any of these companies. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you that not necessarily that they don't care about the customers, but that's difficult for any one of these platforms really measure, especially in a short time period. So yes, absolutely, constantly figuring out what you can give up to show that you are a good actor. If you follow the blogs of big tech, that will give you a beautiful smorgasbord of all these different things that companies are doing to show that they're benevolent actors. And simply because obviously they benefit from it. It's not to say that the people there are bad. It just means that they have a vested interest in showing that they are good actors. So you're absolutely right that they're, to go back to your original argument, that are some legitimate advertisers, will they be caught in the crosshairs? Sure. Generally speaking, are those people who don't really have that much of a platform themselves, so that nobody really notices if a few people, smaller advertisers, get inconvenienced along the way. Yeah, that's going to be very below the radar, and folks like you and I will notice that. But on Capitol Hill, regulators will take notice of all of the good actions that these companies are taking, and I think that that's really what they are. That's what they have top of mind.
Well, I was going to jump in there, Bob, and say one of the things that I do believe is having impact, whether they admit it or not, is this whole huge brand safety. The whole space of brand safety is becoming much more apparent, and the fact that the ad tech is very fallible, and a lot of the organizations who've been claiming that they have all this super duper tech to weed out misinformation and disinformation is being shown to be failing on a consistent basis. And I keep coming back to the Check My Ads Institute. They claim themselves as an ad tech watchdog, and it was co-founded by Deanie Jammy, and who is also previously at Sleeping Giants, and Claire Atkin. And the more I see of their work having it, and then they're just constantly calling out brands and saying, hey, did you know this? Did you know that? And the brands, big brands, on a consistent basis are showing up in this misinformation and disinformation space. And so I think the brands are now just going to start to really, leverage their power, because ultimately they're funding these ad platforms. So as I think about sort of a balanced argument, I think the brand safety, if I'm a marketer, I'm concerned about the brand safety and its significant flaws. So something needs to happen, and definitely I want my brand to be on the right side of ethics and history. And so I think that as well is a sort of a forcing function to really get these platforms to take some action, whether they're perhaps overcorrecting. But I don't think they can afford many more brand safety issues, because if the big brands start pulling their revenue, they're kind of doomed.
Well, it's fascinating, and a topic that we've talked about many, many times, but one that I thought was worth rehashing again tonight because of the recent moves by the brands out there. So we'll just have to wait and see. But moving on, after years of ageism claims leveled at advertisers and agencies who work with them, about the work, about the employment practices, etc., there seems to be movement in the right direction. An article that I read this week shows that we're paying more attention to elder markets. We're going after them more aggressively. We're being respectful of elders in our work. When we're getting into hiring practices, it seems like there's not as much focus on hiring young. There's some wisdom being brought into the organizations. But Janelle, is this something to celebrate, or is this just a thin veneer continuing to hide a problem that it continues to exist? I mean, what are your thoughts here? Is this something that's actually happening, or is this just whitewashing, this article that we've read?
Well, I think that there is a greater awareness in our society, in Western societies, I'm going to say in general, about diversity of all kinds. And that extends to age. And in different industries, different, ages have been looked at as being, either you're very wise and respect your elders, or in the advertising agency has tended to be that young dynamic, kick them out the door when they hit 40 kind of thing, which makes me have one foot in the grave, which is sort of scary. I think it's, so this idea of getting a better understanding that hearing voices of all types is so important. And boy, I've talked about this for years and years in my classes because I teach international business and international marketing. And if you don't understand how important it is to have this variety of perspectives in almost everything that you do, you're going to miss something really important. And so I think that in a general sense, I've seen in the last few years that, the rest of the world, if you will, especially, again, the Western world has sort of, started to get it, I think, a little bit better. And, is it in every corner of our society? Absolutely not. But we're starting to see that and respect that. I mean, the Asian world has always respected their elders so much more than we have in the Western world. So, I mean, I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that balance. And I think it's fantastic. I hope that it is not something that's cursory. I hope that it is something that takes deeper roots and just becomes part of who we are. And again, not just from an age perspective, but all types of diversity, and really respecting this idea of that everyone needs to be part of the discussion, whether it be for developing materials or for understanding the products that we're selling, understanding how people use them and what their experiences may be, because everyone's experiences may be a little bit different, and really incorporating that into all of our processes. So, and that will be, of course, reflected in the ads as well. Reality, our society is aging.
Yeah.
Either you accept that or you don't. I mean, it's a fact. We don't want to get old, but it is what it is. So,
well, right.
That's sort of my view. I hope it has some roots.
We all getting there. Yeah, we're all on that path toward getting older. I mean, it's just like we're all there. It's something that we all have to face, even though some of us don't want to in this process. And, this long-term problem within advertising as a whole of focusing on being young as being the goal and being the awesome part of it, and not really focusing on the wisdom that comes with age and the benefits of being older, has really harmed not just the industry, but society, I think. And the fact that there's movement in this positive direction is really very encouraging in a lot of ways. But Sam, I got to get your take on it. I mean, this is one article. It's giving a few examples. Do you see this in your practice? Do you see brands actually embracing this, agencies actually embracing this and making substantive moves? Or is this just whitewashing?
Well, I attended the 3% conference founded by Kat Gordon, was it a couple of weeks ago or a week or so ago? And there was a breakout session on ageism, which was absolutely enlightening. And so in honor of Cindy Gallup, I'm 48, I'm saying my age. And as I'm looking and sort of reflecting on the industry, the data it's kind of murky but indicative. So depending on the source, the IPA says the average age in the creative industry is 36, and then another source from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is saying, hey, the average US marketing manager is 39 compared to 46 for all managerial roles. So there's a few numbers floating out there, and I think one of the examples which floated up was August 2020 when Mark Reed made a comment about, hey, we have a very broad range of skills, and you look at our people, the average age of someone is less than 30. And that really caused a huge furore in the industry, because it was really, whether he misspoke or didn't really think through, he later walked that back. So then I've gone to WPP's annual report that they published this year, just to look at the numbers. And actually, if I look at the numbers 2020 versus 19, the over 50s is up to 9% from 8% the prior year. And then under 30 is now at 34% versus 38% the prior year. So if you're looking at the numbers at WPP, that you could actually say they've made an improvement. When I read their annual report, there's no talk of it there. They talk about diversity and gender representation and all these other aspects of diversity. But I think the age thing, to Janelle's point, people aren't really talking about it. They're not reflecting on it. They're not I think being honest about the disconnect between the messages and the output versus the reality of who buys. And I was on the AARP website and just looking at who buys what, and basically the people 55 plus buy 56% of new cars and trucks, and 55% of personal care, and 70% of home maintenance and repair. So the numbers prove who the audience is, and you would want to reflect that in the people doing the work and making the decisions in principle. And so I think the industry is still wrestling with it, but struggle to talk about it. But before I get off my soapbox, I just wanted to put one piece out there, because as we talk about ageism in industry, we have to really reflect and consider the multi-generational workforce that we're in. So it's not only about bias as you get older. There's bias against people who are younger and earlier in their career as well. And so it's not all about the, as you get older, there's a challenge. There's biases throughout the system. And one solve that I've seen succeed at a prior organization I was at was actually reverse mentoring, or it's called bidirectional mentoring as well. And it's a principle that basically creates cultural and actual true communication upwards and downwards. And it's the idea that someone junior in their career or early in the organization can actually have wisdom and be paired up with someone more senior, but it's actually the senior person or more experienced person is learning from the junior person or the earlier career person. And it's just a great symbol, a great manifestation and of actually really trying to change the communication, the perspectives, and also the way of working within organizations. So that's kind of a solve I've seen really be powerful to bring people together and mitigate for the bias, for or against people who are either older or even younger.
Janelle, I'd love you to weigh in on that. Your thoughts on what Sam just described. Is that an effective approach to dealing with corporate structures, to have that two-way communication up and down the pipeline, having young people mentoring old people and old people mentoring young people? It sounds like a really good idea, but does it work within most organizations?
I haven't heard a lot about it at this point. So I conceptually, it sounds like a great idea, because he's absolutely right. There is bias that occurs in both directions. There is a reality of that we have less experience when we're young. I mean, that's just a fact, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some really good ideas there. And on the other end, there are some preconceived notions of what old people can or can't learn, not teaching old dogs new tricks. But, and that could be a really good way to mitigate some of that. One of the other things that I've heard about recently is mentorships that are happening, and that,
what kind of mentorships? You broke up there for a second.
Group mentorships.
Oh, okay.
There's, actually working in a group and a team approach to mentoring as opposed to one-on-one only. And so that may have some value as well. It sounds like something that is very promising as an approach. So there's different ways to try and, get at this issue. I would like to point out, though, that, the Sex and the City reboot is coming out, and they're all, rocking gray hair, just saying. I'm not going there just yet, but, Sarah Jessica Parker did. So, who knows? We may see a whole new movement in that direction.
Yeah, I think a lot of people chose gray over the course of the pandemic because they couldn't get to their hairstylist. And I think people have embraced their new side of themselves. So that's fantastic. I think that's really a positive in a lot of ways. Hey, Jeremy, I want to get you in on this from the statistics standpoint. Are the statistics improving? I mean, something that Sam quoted was a movement in WPP's ranks from 8% to 9%. That's just one agency. Do you have any broader perspective from the industry in terms of how many older people are appearing in ads, whether or not hiring practices have improved in any way, shape, or form? Your thoughts?
I have something adjacent to that, which I think you'll probably find satisfactory, which is that the bias towards marketing specifically to younger consumers is alive and well, particularly in the US. So this is something I'm glad that we're talking about it, but I think that we need to be cognizant about the fact that the type of diversity that is probably least respected, arguably, maybe like ideological differences from a diversity perspective, that is the thing that nobody is looking to, get better at from an organizational standpoint. And the thing that's probably after that is age. So it's still, we have a long ways to go. I think that probably part of what has to happen is, I can even say, even from the searches that are popular on eMarketer, we always we can cover any type of demographic that we want to in our briefing that goes out to clients every day. And part of it is that, we always have to be thinking about what do we educate people on and what's something they should spend more time on. And those stats that we were just talking about who's actually doing the buying, I think that there needs to be a little bit more education in that regard, and then hopefully we'll have less people trying to constantly say, how do I sell more to Gen Z? Because the answer is, listen, you can sell to Gen Z all you want, but that doesn't mean you're going to keep them as a customer for the next 60 years. Loyalty is a thing of the past. So try to think about who's actually buying now, and often those are older consumers.
So Sam, you sounded like you were going to say something, but I guess you're.
No, I was humming. I was agreeing, and I always bring data to an opinion party, and my other quote is, the person closest to the data gets to make the decision, and it really sucks if you say 60-70% of people have home maintenance and repairs, 65% of all healthcare. So if the numbers say that's who's buying, why aren't you reflecting them? Why aren't they in the process, in the decision making, in the creative, and why aren't their narratives being the stories featured, right? So once you show the data and use the data that's actually there, then you will make more money, you'll be more successful. But I think the starting point is to actually talk about it and actually face reality. So yeah, the data is just stunning in terms of what it should look like, and I think brands and companies have got a long way to go. But I just don't feel as if ageism is a thing that's really the industry's talking about overtly. It's definitely you see it in LinkedIn, you see it at conferences, but you don't see it in the reports and in the sort of diversity talk as much as you do other aspects of diversity.
It's a real problem for a lot of advertisers. I mean, we all know the facts that people view themselves younger than they are. And when you see an older person in an ad and you're an old person, you will maybe gravitate toward it, but younger people won't, because they don't like to view themselves as being older. They view themselves as being younger. And,
But I think Bob, sorry, I was going to say, that's a great point, though. And that's what I was thinking through, this part of the conversation, is that people aspire to be younger somehow, right? When we're very young, we aspire to be older. Hey, I'm over 21, my fake ID. And then when you're older, I don't know, maybe I'm going to, want to not have an AARP card when I get to that point, right? I mean, and that's what everyone always wants to be, is that ideal self.
Yeah, it's the Pogo.
What we really are.
It's the Pogo cartoon that they've talked about for years. It's just like, I've seen the enemy and he is us. I mean, it's just like, that's just the fact of it. I mean, we are causing the problem. The audience is causing the problem. We don't respect elders in this country. We don't look forward to the wisdom that comes with age. We focus entirely on youth and health and just all the stuff that we glorify in this society. And it's easy to come down on the agencies, but they've got a tough problem. It's easy to come down on the advertisers. They've got the same tough problem. How do we reach as many possible people as economically as possible? And unfortunately, that means looking at young people. But yeah.
But Bob, can I just add something Janelle said about the Asian culture respects their elders? I mean, my heritage is Ghana, Africa. African cultures do the same. So what if we actually embrace the possibility of the communities who are, if we're kind of recording this from America, in the US. So if we actually respect the heritage and the knowledge and the perspective and the worldview of a lot of the people who are here, and they have the creative, they're in the creative, they're in the leadership, they're actually driving they're actually featured as talent in the ads. You'll actually see a different picture, because if we're saying people from Asia, Africa, and other parts of the world, that's the majority of people. So wow, if their worldview is respecting elders and portraying them in a positive way, and in a way of strength, power, esteem, and prestige, and sophistication, and wisdom, and youthfulness. If we can tell those stories, if we can include those stories, I think we'll be in a better place. But that all comes from embracing the totality of diversity and putting those folks in decision-making roles throughout the system. And I think we can get there. But yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, it's a good point and a good way to wrap up. I want to go to our next topic, which is Twitter. Twitter began rolling out its subscription service to users this week. It's called Twitter Blue. And for $2.99 a month, power users gain access to a list of new long-requested features. there's so many. I don't want to get into. Well, we'll get into them in just a second. But Sam, how will this impact the influencer marketing community? Is this going to make Twitter more relevant, more useful to the power users out there? Is it going to be helpful? Is it going to be harmful? How's it going to affect brands? There's lots of questions in my mind about this, and maybe you can go over a few of the features that you like that have that maybe entice you to pony up $2.99 a month and maybe become a power user yourself on this platform. Your thoughts?
Bob, you've asked me 10 questions, so I've got 22 minutes to respond.
You do.
So Twitter is, I'll try and do it in two. So Twitter is ultimately an ad biz, and they're trying to figure that out, right? So I think their Q3 revenue, it was up to $1.1 billion, up 40%. So in terms of progress, they're making it, but they're still so far behind the others. And I think they've said they want to double revenue from 3.7 billion in 2020 to 7.5 billion in 2023. So they're going to be doing stuff, and they're going to be trying really hard. But, like every good expert, I'm going to pontificate about something. No, Bob, no, Janelle, no, Jeremy, no. I actually put the $2.99 where my mouth is. And so I actually begrudgingly paid for that $2.99.
You did,
and it's like, but actually,
you did that for me. You did that for me. Thank you.
I did that for you, but I also did it for myself, and I realized, oh no, it's just like Spotify ads. I hate Spotify with ads, so I will gladly pay for Spotify. I don't think I'm going to go back to not being able to customize my avatar or not being able to organize my bookmarks. Oh, it was just so therapeutic, because I keep bookmarking stuff, but now I can create little categories and save the tweets and organize them. So I've already created about a dozen folders to make it usable, findable, and actionable. So that's one of the things I've paid for. There's a reading mode. I think they acquired a company called Scroll, and so now you can just read things a lot easier. And you've got up to 60 seconds an edit button. But that's kind of a huge amount of pressure, because you've got to proofread and commit to your tweet in 60 seconds. And I'm not sure if that really reduces or increases my...
Explain that to me a little bit. It sounded like what they did was just like a cough button that you have on radio. It's basically you have 30 seconds to change your mind about a tweet and come back and edit it.
There was one article that said 30 seconds, and then I went in and you have up to 60 seconds, Bob.
Wow.
But then I'm thinking, wait, don't I get all this stuff for free everywhere else on Google and all the other functions, on all the other... So yes, they have managed to charge me stuff I'm used to getting for free. And I'm thinking, darn you marketers, what if the model of giving everything away for free is actually not a sustainable business model? So now I'm scared that Google and Outlook are going to start charging me for being able to undo emails and that kind of thing. So I think it's interesting from a personal perspective. Twitter is one of the platforms I really do enjoy, and I really want them to vest in the race to the top versus a race at the bottom, because if you look at a lot of other social platforms, they've kind of cashed out and they've gone for the money, and the UX is horrible. It's terrible. And so some of these features, custom navigation, you apparently 2015 you got that for free. So you're not really getting a lot of value that you can't get for free on other platforms, but you don't get them currently. So I'm probably going to stick with it for at least a month, if not longer, Bob, because I actually feel that it's beneficial. And there's one feature, they're putting stuff in the lab. And one of the things which is interesting, which the other folks can talk about, is that from the desktop, you can actually post 10 videos up to 10 minutes. So that may be an angle where you can be a bit more creative or tell more stories, or people can engage with in terms of they're going to try and find ways where the premiumization will bring in perhaps more revenue or better better content or better experience. But from a user perspective, I feel kind of special that they've thought about me and not just the ads and the ad revenue. They're actually thinking about keeping heavy users happy. And in one of the articles I read, I think journalists were really happy with some of these changes. But is it a sustainable business model? I'm not sure. But yes, I ponied up my $2.99, Bob, and I'm going to give it 2 thumbs up. Now, 4 stars, maybe 4.5 stars from my experience so far.
That's fantastic. Hey, Jeremy, are you excited about this? I mean, this is social, and this is the features sound like they are right in that nexus, that sweet spot where you've lived for the past decade, that nexus between social and research and data and analytics all coming together. Are you excited about this? Is this going to help you, or is this not something that you're going to be ponying up your own $2.99 for?
No, it's the kind of thing that even if I didn't think it would be that helpful, I would have to pony up the $2.99. I'd take out a loan or two in order to try it out. By simple, by virtue of the fact that I cover this stuff, so it's important to see what the utility is like. And I think, for a lot of people, the nice thing is when you've got a pretty good install base, it doesn't matter if not that many people, if it's I don't know, let's say 4% of users wind up signing up for this. Well, then that 4% at about $36 a year quickly does add up. And I think that is important to note. One thing, though, I would also add, which is I think pretty important, I have the Twitter ad revenues per Twitter user at about 42.28 in 2021. And I have to take a look to see what Facebook is, but it is a magnitude. It is a lot higher. I don't have the exact number on me, but that's something I did a point-by-point comparison on recently, which means that Twitter is not at nearly as much of an ad business as Facebook is, which means that they, ironically, that can actually be more of a reason for them to innovate and to different models. It is obviously important to note that Twitter Blue does not protect you from ads. You still have there's no ad-free experience available on Twitter. And I think that hopefully this might be something that shores up their overall, revenue and then allows them to do more interesting things. But I think that for some people, for power users, this is the kind of thing. It might not be the right price. They might ultimately come down at $199 versus $299. But I think it's something very interesting to follow. And for me, the big question is exactly what percentage does wind up signing up and staying with it for a while.
Do you think that's a problem, though? Really a follow-up question to you, Jeremy, is that really a problem, the fact that they don't block ads for this? Because that's not their market, right? They're not going after the people who want to experience the platform with no ads. They're going after the people who are influencers, who are running their own ad campaigns and doing their own types of marketing and doing their own kind of influencer endorsements. And they're not against ads. They're just about trying to have more features to help them do their job a little bit more easily on the platform. So is that not enough?
I think for a lot of people, it will be enough. So I agree with you there. I think the other key thing is that people who sign up for Twitter Blue make up a disproportionately high number of the total eyeballs that you can monetize on Twitter, right? So just to say, what's the big deal? Don't show ads to 4% of your users. Yeah, but that 4% of users might be making up 20% of your overall potential impressions. And that's why it's not something that realistically they've got the ability to offer up even if they wanted to.
Janelle, let's talk from a brass tack standpoint of the people who are going to use this the most. Is it going to be influencers using this the most? Is it going to be brand managers? Who is it going to be? Researchers? Who's going to get the biggest bang out of having this $2.99 fly out of their wallet and give them more features that are useful to doing their job? Any thoughts on that? Any predictions?
Well, I think it's a low enough price point that they will be able to pull in a pretty substantial number of those people who are heavy users. What percentage, hard to say for. I'm a numbers person, and I'd love to be able to give you specific numbers, but I certainly can't forecast that at this point in time. I think that they probably will add on, ad-free later. So you want an ad-free experience, they're going to put in a couple more bucks. Okay, that one's going to be $5.99 or, some other number. It's sort of like Netflix is now adding in, if you want, 4K streaming, it's an extra $5 or something. This is these subscription-based revenue streams they're golden for companies and for brands. And if you can, even get a small percentage, I think it's going to be a win for them. And they're going to look at other ways of adding this into their platform. it's just happening across the board. And, we're seeing it in so many different spaces. I mean, we think of it, very much in the, more in some of the services, but it really is becoming a way that business gets done across the board. And, there's the Subscription Trade Association that actually alumni of Oakland University started. He had started the Gentleman's Box originally. And so he's a big proponent of these subscription type businesses. And I've heard a lot from him about how people are packaging these things. And it's really quite fascinating. And I think there's a younger, back to that generational thing, but there's a younger generation who's going to just, expect that that's the way that things work. You just pay for things monthly because it's become such a part of the way that the world is. And for those of us who are, a couple years older and don't necessarily check every line item on their credit cards every month, you're just going to click, and it's a couple bucks, whatever. And then, Sam's got the features he wants, and it probably doesn't really impact him all that much to pay that. So I think this is going to move forward. We're going to see more and more of it and pretty much everywhere. And for Twitter, it's probably going to be a win. I would be surprised if it isn't, actually.
Well, I got one more topic I want to get to before we wrap up the show, and that's the fact that consumer goods have been bracing for the global supply chain shortages, and in the process, the age-old phrase of made in America is finding new energy and enthusiasm. And I'm wondering, since I have you, Janelle, what does this trend mean for the future of brand positioning, if anything? Is this just a temporary move back to the made in America, rah-rah, we're going to, you get a product that's 100% made in America. Is that going to gain traction and be something that's something more than just a union call? Or is that going to be just something that goes away with the pandemic and everything else kind of evening out and supply chains figuring themselves out and stuff like that? Your thoughts?
So from an academic perspective, this is called the country of origin effects, and was originally, thought that place of manufacture was going to be very important to consumer decision making. And it's turned out that it really isn't. It's more a brand phenomenon. So if a brand is perceived to be from a specific country, then it can impact more so than where it's made, or even who a corporate owner may be. So for example, the Chevy brand, quintessential American branding at one time, right? Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Again, showing my age there, guys.
Hey, I remember that very well.
I'm not really that old. I'm not that old, I promise. Or I don't think I am anyway. But Chevy actually has quite a lot of parts for most of their cars comes from overseas. So if you think about that, Chevy is still positioned not so explicitly as an American brand, but it certainly is, positioned more so. But so many of their parts and so much of their manufacturing is coming out of from other parts of the world. And then you have their ownership structure is very global, although it's a U.S. based. I mean, the actual capital ownership structure is truly global. Further examples from the automotive industry, Volvo is considered to be a Swedish brand, and people still have these perceptions that are associated with the branding that they've established over the years of safety and quality. Some innovation, but safe innovation, if you will. Volvo's owned by the Chinese now. It's owned by Geely. And they're manufacturing in a number of different places around the world. So, I guess to answer your question is this going to become, I think you're going to see shorter supply chains overall. I think there will be an opportunity for some brands to position as being more domestic, not just in the United States, but in other parts of the world. It also goes hand in hand with a lot of the nationalism that we've seen. Right, because if you can position as being, American to a segment of the population that is very nationalistically oriented, it's going to be, have a positive effect on the perceptions of the brand. So I guess to answer your question, things being made here, I don't know that that's necessarily going to be true, but we could definitely see a lot more domestic positioning in different parts of the world. And that would mean greater adaptation of brands as well. You know, there was a time, for example, McDonald's, you know, very American brand again. Any place you went in the world, you knew you were in a McDonald's, and it felt very American, very standardized everywhere you went. You know, I was in Lake Como, Italy, a couple years ago, and I just about fell over when I realized the store that I was in was a McDonald's. Wouldn't have even known it because it was so set up like a cafe, an Italian cafe, very adapted to their local market.
That seems.
I think this is going to be a phenomenon everywhere.
Yeah, that seems to be a real trend to preserve your brand globally, but at the same time to adapt the brand to the local markets. I mean, it seems like the brands have been getting a lot more sophisticated, and I tend to agree with you. I think it's going to move back to that type of thinking as opposed to the whole made in, you know, blank country, you know, that whole nationalism approach is it's got a certain cachet in certain markets, but it doesn't really work from a longstanding perspective. Any last words, Sam, that you would add to that? Any thoughts on it?
Yeah. You know, it was interesting. I perhaps took this in a different direction, and I'm thinking about the supply chain issues and what that has for consumers, and you know, getting the stuff they want, getting the stuff around the world. And Made in America is kind of a shortcut. I think it was American Giant CEO sent a note saying, hey, you know, we don't have any you don't need to worry about Far East supply chain issues because our brand doesn't have a Far East supply chain. It's made in America. And that sort of borderline between overt nationalism territory, which could go the wrong way, but also there's a sense of circular economy, regeneration, and purpose. And they have this Delta project. So as I'm thinking about this, there's actually a way to see this from a brand perspective that comes back to purpose, sustainability, and the sense of doing good and regeneration. And it's the idea of, if we've got all these issues getting new stuff, how do we actually support the people, the planet, and you know, profits by actually recycling and reusing existing, and thinking about how, as a brand, you're part of that solution with these issues going on. And it reminds me of IKEA. I think a couple of weeks ago, they came out saying, hey, look, our profit dropped 4% and we're going to have to increase costs due to higher transport and raw materials. And I'm thinking, from a marketer's perspective, what if the CMO and the marketing team actually tell a different story to the CFO and CEO? It's a perfect time to tell stories of their customers, consumers, shoppers actually using their buyback and their recycling program, because they have these circular hubs, and they're selling products. I think they'll buy stuff back for 50% if there's no scratches, 40% if it's slightly used, and this kind of thing. So just as a marketer, I'm thinking I don't want to own the problem, and maybe I don't want to go down the country of origin route as a solve, but there's a bigger sort of more global perspective that I could see these challenges as and actually be part of that solution. So that, for me, this sort of circular economy, regenerative, more sustainable thinking, IKEA was a classic example that came to mind. I'm sure there are many, many other brands out there, and you know, providers who could think about it in that way and actually encourage their consumers and shoppers to see those problems as opportunities to shift what they consume and how they consume. And I that could actually be that is a huge opportunity, and it's some work I'm doing on that side that's just fascinating. So that's just a little pivot from the way I took the story and thought about solutions that we could live into.
No, it's a great perspective. I really appreciate you bringing that up. Well, with that, it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with Jeremy Goldman. You can find him at insiderintelligence.com. Also, I'm assuming you can find him at emarketer.com, but I'll let him tell you where you can find him and what's going on. So tell us, Jeremy, what's going on in your life?
Yes, indeed. No, so I'll tell you one thing that I'm really proud of is, in addition to my Future Proof podcast, which I've had for a while, and done independently of my day job. I've also, because I like to work as my hobbies, apparently, I've also did something I was really proud of. I went to Web Summit in Portugal recently, and then interviewed a number of different executives for a second podcast that I'm doing with eMarketer called Brand Anatomy, which you can find in their standard podcast feed, the Behind the Numbers podcast. So just basically go there, and then we're kind of doing a few stealth pilot episodes of Brand Anatomy on a bi-weekly basis, and you'll be able to see me interview a number of different brand executives from around the world. So really excited about that.
Oh, that does sound exciting. Congratulations. That sounds like it's a really great project. I'm looking forward to it. Next up, we have Sam Mani. You can find him at cisquared.net. That's the home of the consultancy where he is in charge, managing partner in charge of the marketing practice. So tell us what's going on in your world, Sam. What would you like to promote?
Well, yeah, there's this whole world of storytelling, communication. I think I used the example from IKEA, which is actually, grounded in reality and this whole sustainable space. So that all great stuff in the brand transforming capability. So I'm keeping busy doing that. So hit me up for that through LinkedIn or Twitter, as I'm paying for this premium service. I want to see if there's any other benefits. You can find me at Samuel Money on Twitter.
Are you thinking they're going to give you more tweets because they're paying a $2.99?
I don't know. I'm trying to be an influencer, Bob. If this is not going to give me the influencer gear, then what will? And shameless plug for my podcast, Across the Pond Marketing Transformed, with my wonderful co-host Chris Lawson. We've wrapped up season 5, but there's a bunch of episodes there on from marketing theory to routine disruption and people-powered marketing and being a lifetime student. So there's some great episodes out there. So check us out, please. You can find us at marketingtransform.com and available for free. But if you want to hire me, obviously, that's not going to be for free.
Yeah, you do want to hire him, but listen to his podcast first. You'll be impressed. Last but not least, we have Janelle Townsend. She is a professor at Oakland University, which you can find at oakland.edu. Great program, great teacher. So tell us what's going on in your world. What would you like to promote, Janelle?
Well, I guess, just kind of following on what Jeremy and Sam talked about, some of the projects that they're working on. One of the things I'm working on right now is looking at the role of halo products within a brand's portfolio. And I find it to be a fascinating area because there hasn't been a lot of academic work done on it, but it's one of those things that everybody knows what a halo is when they see it. So how do you define that more clearly? So I'd love to have any feedback from folks. If anyone has anything they'd like to share with me about their thoughts about halo products and the role of halo products in a brand portfolio. And as far as a plug goes, I would really, this past week was Veterans Day here or Remembrance Day in the UK. I think it's, really important to perhaps give a shout out to people in the military and, just thank them for their service. I think that's important for us to remember how important those institutions are to society.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. So definitely to the veterans out there, thank you. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me, and of course, you can even find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, Sam, Agency Zulu Alpha Kilo's video that mocks the obsession over awards within the industry, within the agency community, is just brilliant. I mean, it starts off and I'm like, oh, what is this? It's just another cute little video, but it got really, really kind of targeted and kind of pointed in the way that it went after other agencies and their obsession with winning awards. What are your thoughts about this video? Did you get a chance to watch it?
Yeah, I did. And, I love the marketing and advertising industry. I'm an advocate, I'm champion. And so this was great to actually see the ability to laugh at ourselves and the ridiculousness of the awards industry and the awards process. Although the irony, of course, for this was organization after running this piece, they actually did win some awards that they submit for. So it's like, wait, hang on, it's like self-referential humor, but we still won anyway. So I don't know. It was like, really playing with my psyche, how deeply rooted they managed to, to trick us all, to laugh at themselves, but still be laughing on the other side by winning as well.
Yeah, I hadn't seen anything as targeted and funny like this since the classic Portland One Show ad that came out. There was a video so many years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago. It was just hilarious, early days of the internet. But that's on a whole other story. This was just a really good ad. A video, I should say, not an ad, but it was really good.
Yes, so the audience, if you're listening, check it out. We didn't tell you at all what goes on in the ad. That's hilarious, but now you're gonna have to find it and watch it, and then you'll laugh hysterically, and you'll fall out of your chair.
Now, the fail this week, I'm going to give to a Canadian gender transition surgeon, Jeremy, who was censured over tasteless social media promotions that he was running. I mean, he was seen holding left breast and right breast tissue buckets in his hand, and he says, "Well, they were empty buckets. It was just a joke, but it was just so tasteless and not very well done." Your thoughts on this? Do you get a chance to take a look at this?
So, without having seen this directly, actually, to be honest, I think that what's very interesting to me about this is, can we really blame somebody for trying this hard? I mean, I think that it's basically a fail, but a very understandable fail, just given the fact that over and over and over, you have situations where people are rewarded by doing things that are more out there and might be lacking in taste, to say the very least. So I think that. Yeah, I think that this is one of those examples. And the sad fact is, for every 50 fails, one person is rewarded by doing something along these lines. And that's why people, will constantly try to challenge the status quo in a way that's, a little tasteless.
That's why Augie Ray has always said that real-time marketing is like playing Russian roulette. I mean, just because of the statistics that you offered up. I mean, it's like for every 50 that fail, one will succeed. So does that sound like a good marketing strategy? Probably not, but people still do it. Well, the foul of this week, Janelle, I'm going to give to the fact that a study was recently done saying that 25% of advertisers admit that sustainability is more of a general goal than a measured one. In other words, 25% of the advertisers who are saying that they have some kind of climate change approach or some kind of green company, or they're trying to do something that's more eco-friendly, are just doing it in a general way without any kind of metrics to back it up. Your thoughts?
I'm actually surprised that it's that low. I think greenwashing is something that is a lot more prevalent than, is being recognized right now, because it's a bandwagon and everyone's trying to figure out how to jump on it. And so I'm not saying that there aren't brands that are truly sustainable and making that part of their mission and their long-term vision for their brands, but there's certainly a lot. I think there's a lot out there that's left to some interpretation. So I'm really not surprised by that one.
Yeah,
it is. It's sad. It's sad. I'm not surprised.
I was actually of the opinion, like you, that this number seems low, and it's probably because people lied. People lied on this survey. Well,
so can we just throw in there the foul to the French fry flavored vodka?
I was on the fence with that. I was on the fence with that one because it's just like it seems so disgusting, and I was going to put it in a fail or a foul, but I'm like, it's probably going to work, and that's the most gnawing, disgusting, awful thing about this. It's probably going to work, and it's going to do exactly what they wanted, which is get attention for the brand. But KFC it's Arby's is putting out their French fried flavored vodkas, and it's just seems so disgusting. I can't believe this is actually happening, but it's probably going to be very effective.
I do think that roast beef flavored tequila might do better, but that's just me.
Oh dear.
We'll leave that alone for now. Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag #FairFailFoul. That's pound #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.